This episode is brought to you by Mortgage Workflow Partners and the Mastering Encompass series, both for users as well as administrators. You can find out all the information about it over at masterengencompass.com. Also, if you'd like to check out what we're doing on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to the channel using the @MasteringEncompass handle. And make sure you stay up to date on all the information, not just with podcasts, but also video content that we bring to you as often as possible. Now let's get on to the episode. Hey, welcome everyone. Larry Bailey here, Mortgage Workflow Partners. Today's Tuesday. It is 4 p.m. That means we're going to get together as a community. We're going to go through all kinds of cool stuff. Today's topic is all about how to truly embrace workflow before technology in your organization. We're going to kind of shoot the breeze here for a little bit as people wander into the call. Thanks for those that are coming today. I'm sorry about last week. It was a bit of a human error. A human would be me, because I had schedules changed around quite a bit and realized that we had it set on the wrong day. So my apologies for that. For those that are showing up today, thank you. I realize it's probably screwed everybody's calendar up, so I apologize. And as we're rolling in, a couple of housekeeping items I wanted to go over with the community here. Before we get going. First of all, let's go ahead and share this screen over here. Beautiful. So first of all, I want to make sure that everybody understands as you're going through the community, one of the things that tends to happen, I found, is folks don't know about the free courses area. So sometimes this just shrunk. So it's really easy not to see it. So if you happen to be scrolling down, you'll see the for everyone. That's where you come in here. So you can always expand out the free courses, and you should be able to join. So the Encompass 25.2 release, we've had about 147 people go through there. We recently updated the web version, so go ahead and check that out. Hopefully everybody has a great weekend of updates. Let's see here. We've got, Candace, sorry, that was on me. So we have that in there. That's the first housekeeping thing. Make sure you keep those free courses. Also, if you're interested in enrolling in the admin coaching and certification course, there is a 14-day trial. So if you click on any one of these, you can sign up. It will ask you for credit card information because we need to make sure you are you. But you can sign up for 14 days. You can cancel anytime. And basically what that allows you to do is, besides all the resources in there, allows you to sign up for all these weekly courses, et cetera, and the chats and everything else. Today, we had a great workshop where I went through comparison forms, how to build them, how to understand them. And then also later on, we'll provide the actual input form and business rules, et cetera, to run those suckers in there for you, for those that want to join that. All right, so there's that part. Lastly, let's talk about AI. So in the community, easiest way to get to the AI agent is to click the little chat bubble right there, that direct message, and then select agents here, and then go ahead and click the plus symbol. So by doing that, you'll go ahead and start a new message, select that agent, and just be like, how do I set up a calc field? I could type. And it'll figure things out and go through there. I just actually took there was a question in there earlier today from another community member that was all about how to set up a method to do something based upon 10 days after a milestone was finished. An AI agent walked them through how to set up a scheduler along with notification template. Super awesome. This platform continues to amaze me on how it would answer, because it thinks like I do, because it gives all the information. So in any event, make sure that you are leveraging the AI agent. Candace said, my boss is asking, how do we cancel? She said she did not see it in the contract when I asked about her joining for the trial period, hopefully longer. Candace, it's in the sign up for the cancellation terms. If that's unclear, let me know, but we have had folks join and go through the trial and cancel. So I know it's possible, but if it's not clear, let me know, and we'll try to get that a little bit more clear. All right, so we've got a quorum here. We've got enough people joining. Let's get into our conversation. So today's conversation, as it says on the open events, is all about how to truly embrace workflow before technology in your organization. So for those that are here, and feel free to use the chat or the Q&A here on the Teams meeting. But for those that are here, raise of hands. Who's actually using the concept of putting workflow first in your company before technology? Like if I go through here and I let me see if I can hit play on here. There we go. It looks beautiful. So who's actually putting workflow first? Anybody? And here's what I'm really asking you. Luke is like starting to. So the idea is when you think about it as a company, as you're going through your day, how are you addressing when a company's like, oh, we want to do this thing? It could be a support ticket. It could be somebody comes back from a trade show. Now, this is a slide. This slide format is from the FCCS, it's a Farm Credit conference that I did a keynote speech for not too long ago, as well as a workshop. Half the audience was using Encompass, the other half was not. So this was not an Encompass thing. This was a lending thing. And so the reason why I'm asking you to actually consider what comes first in your company, workflow or technology, is because workflow always comes before technology, always. And how do I know that? First of all, because I started in lending when the technology was a typewriter and a thermal fax machine, and we still closed loans. We still used paper, right? So you could consider technology of a paper and a pen, or excuse me, you could consider paper and a pen a piece of technology, but it's usually not what people think about. But the idea of when you, as an Encompass administrator, I know you're steeped into, or an Encompass user, you're steeped into this concept of technology. Like if I see one more post about AI in LinkedIn, or I know there's I just put out a ton of videos from different clients, like high-end clients that have a budget that just would make me sweat because it's that big, and they're all about AI and they're all about data and they're all about all these things, and that's great. I'm all in on that conversation. I'm all in on data workflows. But if you don't have workflows lined up first, none of this technology matters. And that's my attitude. And that's the way I believe it. And that's the way I kind of trademarked it, actually. So, so today's conversation is really putting that to the test. Really, for you, what I want you to take away from today, and you're going to have a call to action at the end of this meeting today, is I want you to do one thing in regards to what we're going to talk about. Having said that, when I talked about schedules, for those that are coming late, again, I apologize. Me a couple to, I'm falling on the sword for you for getting the calendar screwed up. I went through and made sure that all the calendar dates are correct. A couple of these months had weird days that the alternating Tuesdays fell on. And so sorry if I screwed up your calendars. I really am. But they aren't going to change anymore. Everything's locked in. That's number one. Number two, these meetings are going to be more how to do something going through June through December. So we're going to have all kinds of workshops set up to where you're going to come and you're going to learn how to do something, and then I'm going to ask you to go do it. And hopefully you're going to go do it. Or if you've already done it, you're going to maybe look at how you did it and maybe reflect on how you could do it better. So when we come over into this conversation, show of hands, in your workflow, who uses checklists? Could be a paper checklist, could be an input form checklist. If everyone's hand doesn't go up, you're not paying attention. Everybody, come on, look around, look at the room. Everybody's got their hands up, right? And so thank you for saying. Okay, second thing, when you're thinking about a checklist, you consider an Outlook/email a task list. So again, same conversation said a little bit differently. When you look at how your workflow runs, we do workflow reviews every day, pretty much every day. We're in a workflow review with some client somewhere, and it is extraordinarily pervasive how many companies' workflows use checklists and how many workflow companies use Outlook/email. And Outlook could be like they're using it for task lists, or they use an email and they'll either put it into a special folder and they'll mark it as unread, or they'll actually color code their email or use flagging, those kinds of things. And so the reason why this is important is because this is all about how do you use your workflow? How do you really develop your workflow into your company? And using a checklist is the result of somebody saying, I want to make sure somebody did something. That's the reason why a checklist exists. Like literally, if somebody's walking around with a pad or a whatever, a tablet, and they're holding a clipboard, and they're like, yeah, I did that. Yeah, I did that. I did that. This is an arcane perspective of, if we know it's done in Encompass, why do we need somebody to verify it? If you're using Outlook email as a task list, it's because it's the best thing that you have in your workflow, which doesn't mean that you're doing things wrong. It just means that you can do better. And so, Candace, I would imagine, Candace put a chat in there about email notifications, not actually using them as checklists. I would wager very heavily that your team is either unreading or marking those emails as unread to remember to go do something, or they're using flagging, or they're putting them in a folder, or even better, they're creating a calendar reminder to remember to do something that came to them via email. It's typically what we see. And so when we're going through this situation, we've got to think about, well, maybe it's the tech. Maybe it's the technology that's causing this to happen. And so I thought this would be a good reminder. And Mark says, or mapping them to the folder. So this is a good reminder. And again, I used 1975 for the Home Lending Conference because that's when they were founded, in 75, and it just happens to be 50 years. And I know I started lending in 93, which is right around this time frame. And certainly Calix was there. And in 96 is when I got to use Desktop Underwriter for the very first time through a landline, like dial-up landline kind of a thing. And so I like to talk about this part right here. Last 5 years. And so everybody on this call has been an administrator, I think, usually for at least 5 years, last 5 years. And when I put this to the general, if we were all together, I'd say in a room, okay, for those that have been administrators in the last 5 years, what has really happened? What have you really done in terms of redefining your workflow? And historically speaking, the answer is very little, because you're not in a position to really define workflow. You're working with your company who's feeding you tickets, or they're telling you what they want set up or configured into Encompass, because they're kind of driving that workflow. And for those that still have hands up, let me know if you're asking a question. I'm not, or maybe just didn't put your hand down. But if you're one of the very few kinds of admins who actually goes back to your team and says, hey, listen, this weekend, 25.2, we're getting new updates in the settings. And based upon that, I can go back in the workflow, and over here in disclosing, we can now set up one-click disclosures more effectively. Or over here in underwriting, we can now leverage better ways to make sure we take advantage of automated enhanced conditions. And you're going back through and you're really giving the business direction, what they should be doing. So if you're comfortable raising your hand on, for those people, and again, there's about, oh wait, there's 2 people not even in here. Oh, I'm such a bad host. Oh, no, that's just hands raised. Cool. So out of the 24 people that are here, if somebody feels comfortable to raise your hand, how many people have an active, ongoing, at least monthly engagement with the business to say, as an administrator, this is what I think we need to be doing with our workflow? Is anybody actively doing that with their business? And so again, I think there was a couple of hands raised to begin with. So let's say there's about 4 or 5 that have raised their hand. So about 20, about 20%, about 5 out of 25, right? So the other 80%, right? So that's that the other 80%. What's kind of holding you back? Candace put on there no time to do that, right? And I want you to think about this really seriously. Just pause for a second. If you don't have enough time to help your company move forward with their workflow, who's going to get the time? Who's going to actually sit back in the room, in the decision room, and say, hey, why aren't we using this? So Sonia says, we have a meeting, but I don't tell them how to update their workflow. And to which I would say, if you're not comfortable doing that, ask the question, why aren't we updating the workflow? You don't always have to have the answers, gang. Like, I happen to be a unicorn, and I know that because I spent the first 20 years out of 30 running retail shops, building companies, working from sales straight through post-closing. I've done everything I can do in a retail workflow, period. I've also then had a chance to work in a non-retail environment had to run Encompass a whole line for 5 different channels at the same time. I know not everybody's going to have that opportunity for experience. I get that. But you can still ask the question, hey, why aren't we doing this yet? I don't know if you guys caught the announcement from M&T Bank this week on LinkedIn, but they went on to promote how they were excited about their 100-person company moving to Encompass Web. Now, moving to, transitioning, all phrases, right? But the idea is they're leveraging Encompass Web in their daily workflow. Big deal. M&T Bank, big deal. And so somebody had to start the question of why. And Candace says, stay curious. I'm going to take it a little bit step further. Does anybody remember these? Anything look familiar? Hopefully, right? I mean, come on, the little thumb dudes, like, yeah, it was like never seen it. Here's that clipboard, by the way. Disclosure log, fax machine. We probably still have some copiers around. There's the e-folder before it was an e-folder. Anybody know what these are? Quick answers. Anybody know what these are right there? 1, 2, 3. No. So it's a multi-tab folder. So the e-folder, if you ever work with somebody who worked on paper and they want to name their documents like asset, bank statements, credit report, title, whatever, right? Accordion folder a little bit, but it's more about tab dividers like Candace sat in there. They actually would come in packs. And so you would actually buy the packs separate from the hardback folders. Again, I told you, I'm an old dude in mortgage, at least. And so the idea here is that if you walked into an office like this, are you telling me you wouldn't know what to say? I think you would. I really do. I think you would. And so the idea here is that when you look at documenting your workflow, you might not have it, right? This is really hard. Like, I can tell you, when I was implementing Encompass for Ellie Mae's, going back, it's 25 now, so 13 years ago, I would get the deal and I would get you in. You just bought Encompass. You'd come to me as an implementation project manager, and I would say, hey, welcome. I'm Larry Bailey. You have your workflow documented, to which you would resoundingly say no. So just curious, does anybody on the call have their workflow actually documented from sales through accounting? Okay, this is working on it. So generally the answer is no. Again, look around the room. You're not the only one. Lube is like, I need, and by the way, you can see the extent of my eyesight here. This is not unusual, but it doesn't mean you don't have to live here. What does it mean to document your workflow? Sometimes this really gets people in a pinch because they're like, I don't have time to document more workflow. I just told you a second ago, I don't even have time to ask questions about why we're not doing certain things in our workflow, let alone document it. And so there's a couple of ways to deal with this. First of all, it's not your job to document the workflow, it's the company's. And I don't know any CEO I've ever met who doesn't say they want their workflow documented. It's about resources and about the capacity to generate that documentation. And so when I look at this problem, this is the reason why I created the workflow review at Mortgage Workflow Partners, is because I know that this is a problem, and I know that because people don't have the resources to do it, we do it for them. Here's why I'm bringing this up. This is not a sales pitch. I want to show you what it looks like, because sometimes seeing is understanding. This is not complicated. We literally went through and we asked, okay, what do you do? This says simple nexus. I can read that much. And over here, here's the finished part of this branch. This is a salesperson. Okay. That's why it starts with simple nexus. And the idea is you just ask them what they're doing. And if you don't have the time to ask them, have them document what they're doing. And here's the value proposition. The value proposition is that if you can find out from them what they're doing, you can look at that right away to say, dude, why are you doing that? Oh my God, I can just do this in Encompass now, and I could save your life in some way by not having to redo that same thing over and over again. And then the more you do this with each department, what you'll find is you'll find these patterns in your company that you never knew existed, because no one's ever stopped to ask the question, what do you do all day? People typically come to you as administrators and they're like, hey, can you fix this? This thing is broken. And all you have enough time to do is to fix the broken thing. You'd love to be able to stop and fix the root cause, but you don't have time for that, right? It's reality. And so what ends up happening is if you go through and you do this with a couple of departments, even one, just pick one department and just have them go through it. What you'll find is there's ways that you can save their life, whether it's a simple training resource that you can put on a video. I use Loom. It's free. You can get it for free, but you can use SharePoint, or you can use, what the heck's the thing through Microsoft, whatever, Stream. You can use Stream. Or maybe you come up with a methodology of leveraging notification templates with schedulers so that nobody has to remind or be reminded what to do. Stephanie, let me know if you have a question. I see your hands up. I don't know if that's just left over, or if you have a question, let me know. I'll take you off mute. But the idea here is that when you go through and do these workflows, you can identify the issue that you see. And again, I've got a format. I've been working on this thing for a couple of years, and I've got a team member, Christy Younger, who makes my life a hell of a lot easier to produce this stuff. But this is how I created these workflow reviews to give the teams. And you can see this. I used to do this whole big list, and it was just overwhelming. So what I try to do now is, and what I recommend for you is, in your departments that you're working through, by really making it a workflow conversation before anything else, notice that it isn't that somebody isn't using a piece of technology. It's that they're not doing something in their workflow in a way that is more effective. And look at some of these expected outcomes, but just by leveraging dashboards or requesting documents via e-folder. Right now, we know that we can use workflow tasks. And again, I don't put workflow engine rules in here. I just say request it through the e-folder, because that can be done manually or it can be done through workflow rules. But the idea is we want less time writing emails. Just making sense, guys? Like, hopefully I'm driving some ideas home for you for how to manage things to go through in ways that are scalable, right? Ways that are usable. Now, this is the time of year where lots of people are out at conferences. We obviously had a huge conference with ICE back in March. We've got some other conferences that are happening. I'm going out and doing a big one with NAMBA, and then also the Mortgage Collaborative, those kinds of folks. And it's not unusual for somebody comes back with a next shiny object. Told you this was a presentation. I told you I had this stuff. So the idea is, with this shiny object piece, I didn't even know it was called magpie syndrome. Thanks internet for straightening me out. But Has anybody ever had a salesperson or a manager, an executive or whatever come back from a conference and they're like, oh my God, I saw this cool thing that they're doing in this other Encompass or this other plugin or whatever, and we got to have this. We got to do this. This is going to make our lives so much better. Right? I see it all the time. And so, what do you do about it? It's got to be, it's got to be done. It's got to be done. This is going to help us. To which I go back and I say, okay, where in the workflow are you going to use it? And they go, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, no, I mean, it's totally cool. I get it. Like you want to automate the disclosures, or you want to use OCR tech, or you want to use a VOA or VOI or VOE tech, or whatever. Name the tech, right? And I go back to this workflow document. I'm like, where are we putting it in the workflow? Like, let's figure this out. We're going to put this in the puzzle piece. And all of a sudden, it's just like, oh, well, I don't know. Now imagine you don't have this that's on screen right now. Very easy. It's very, very simple for somebody to just come along and do, oh, no, this is going to solve our problems all day long. So be wary of being able to control these situations of your business coming to you, or if you are the business going to your admin team to saying, hey, I want you to implement this new piece of tech that we just got. Because if you don't have a spot for it to go in workflow, it's going to waste your time, your money, your resources, and potentially your business. And so here's some ideas. Tell me if any of these. I'd love to know if you're in the process of either have finished one of these, or you're in the process of doing one of these. Let me know. Put it in the chat if you're doing one of these. So workflow tasks, and it's a workflow pipeline, by the way. I know it's not task pipeline views, but workflow tasks, workflow pipeline. Is anybody working towards implementing this today in any part of your company? Using workflow tasks in desktop exclusively, or using workflow tasks and workflow pipelines in web user interface? So Candace is all over this. She's like, yes. If you're not doing this, a little in web, so mark a little in web. So keep in mind that workflow tasks start on desktop. Start in desktop. You need extraordinarily low effort to create a workflow task that everybody can use. And the way that I would encourage you to think about this is, if they're using a checklist, workflow task. If they're using an email to create a flag, workflow task. If they're sending email back and forth between departments to remember what to do, workflow task. Now, once they start building up these workflow tasks, you can say, hey, how are you tracking all these workflow tasks? And they'll tell you, oh, they're doing something outside of Encompass because they haven't figured it out. That's when you can leverage the workflow task pipeline in the web UI and just tell them to park it over on one of their screens. And it's just there. So remember, this weekend, 25.2, we're getting a new user interface to the workflow task pipeline. Over on the right now, there's going to be 3 separate icons. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, make sure you take the 25.2 release notes walkthrough class that I created specifically on the Encompass web. And I go into those 3 icons and what they mean and what it means for you. So Candace says, we're just starting the conversations to implement task workflows. We've used dashboards heavily. Yeah, and dashboards are great, but a dashboard doesn't tell a specific user what needs to be done on a specific loan as a list. And that's the power of workflow tasks. How about automated document requests? Right? And so that's a new workflow rule. Where you can automate your document requests. Now, naturally, this is presuming you're using Consumer Connect. If you're not using Consumer Connect and you already have this on some automated document list management thing, that's totally cool. But remember, you can't build that out into automation. You can do like an automated document request up front, but based upon loan data in a file, you can only do that. So this is where, I constantly pick on these other POSs that are not API based. So naturally you have Consumer Connect. As a side note, the big POS will also allow for automated document requests according to what they've talked about, because their POS is API based. Hopefully these other POSs get on that wagon, but not yet so far. And the idea of automated document requests isn't just the upfronts. It's the as needed throughout the file. And so, if a borrower gets in a flood zone, automatically request flood insurance, right? If it's 20 days before closing on a purchase, automatically request homeowners. These are real things. So that's an idea of automated document requests for your ideas for your workflow. Isn't just about the initials, it's about the ongoing throughout your workflow. Hopefully that makes sense. Take some ideas and go do something. Automated services being ordered and then automated services being retrieved. Is anybody doing this? Typically what I hear from folks is they're doing this for like flood, or fraud, things like that. I did hear recently, Denise, Candace, which service are you automating for flood? Thanks, Rebecca. So one of the things I heard of recently was Zactus had a problem with, I think it was an 8821 or something. I don't know, some request for tax transcripts. And it was not automatically coming back into the E folder. I don't know if it was just this one situation, but you definitely want to make sure that you have a good understanding of the documentation from the vendor that you're using, and how their API is working. I also know that last week I came across factual data for EPC did not go through the web settings. It went through services password management. I don't know. But it's important to make sure that, again, whoever you're using, stick with that company's support team and make sure that you receive not only documentation to implement, but make sure you have it. For me, I'm checking with my contacts at least once every other month, just to make sure that they've not updated their technology in some way that's going to affect my workflow. All right, and then the last thing on the slide is one-click disclosures. Notice I did not put automated disclosures. And I did that intentionally because you can't get to automated disclosures until you get to one-click. And you can't get to one-click disclosures unless you satisfy your prerequisites for Encompass web disclosures. Okay, so is anyone still have to move to new doc viewer and one-time passcode? So remember, even if you're using another POS, I'm still highly encouraging everyone to make sure you enable new doc viewer and enable one-time passcode. Now, naturally, if you want to use Encompass Web, you have to move on to enhanced conditions, right? If you want your team to ever see conditions using Encompass Web UI, you have to move to enhanced conditions. I understand that's a heavy lift for some, but it's extraordinarily light lift to do one-time passcode, because that just frees up your team from having to worry about authorization codes. Not only does that affect your borrowers, but it obviously always also affects your third parties. Kristen says, July 1st for new doc viewer if I can ever get it out, get out of production. Good luck. And then Candace says move to enhanced conditions. I guess that's what that means. A new doc viewer last year. Cool. Nice job. Congratulations. So it can be done. And you're still in business, Candace and Candice, you guys are still in business, still going good. You haven't got out of business yet. Same with Rebecca, has been on new doc viewer for over a year. Yeah, it's one of those things where you just have to make sure you go through the training and the utilization. These are 4 ideas, right, for enhancing your workflow, leveraging technology you already have. The one-click disclosures is one of those things that where I've talked about in in the admin class about disclosure readiness. So if you're having trouble kind of understanding how to help your company to move to one-click disclosures and then obviously automated disclosures, good news. We're going to talk about it in a workshop. I'm going to show you how to do it. So definitely stay tuned to upcoming workshops here at Mastering Encompass. All right. Ideas for your business. These are things that I talk about. Has anybody ever heard me talk about data workflows? Does anybody not know what I mean? And I know there's somebody, so I'm kind of setting this up. So a data workflow is a concept of, again, normally you'd have, thanks, Angie. Normally you have these paper workflows or document workflows, things like this. And what I want you to start really thinking about for your business is the data. Again, if you paid attention to some of the videos that ICE posted publicly recently about their clients that were on these infomercials. One of them was all about data, AI. What do we do as as us, right? As what I would call average companies, average people. If the data is coming in from a trusted source, stop verifying the data. That's your data workflow. So if we have a company that invests in OCR tech or invests in EPC integrations that get the data from the source and get it into the file, stop re-verifying that information. There's no reason for it other than you're the problem. Your business is the problem. So the idea here is that as you're starting to mature your workflow, and this is not a today thing, this is an ongoing thing for your business. Again, horizon stuff. My expectation is by the end of 27, if you're not thoroughly invested into your data workflow, you're out. Like you're going to be out. You're going to be left behind. Your company is going to be spending far too much money on their workflow. And Lisa's not unusual. Everybody's got somebody checking what somebody else did. And we know this from underwriting. If an underwriter goes in and gets, let's say you're using, again, a third-party tech that's evaluating tax returns, and it evaluates an answer. I've got underwriters that go and re-underwrite the whole damn tax return again. Like, what? It's crazy. Either you trust the tech or you don't. Either you trust the data or you don't. I do want to reinforce for your business, again, ongoing training for your entire workflow, ongoing training for your admins. These two things do not happen in the mortgage industry, and it's wild to me. I come from a banking background. As an originator, every year you've got to recertify, how to pass your NMLS continuing education credits. My wife's an RN. Every year she's got to pass certain certifications. In the hospital, she's using a hospital setting for a while. Everybody's got to know how to use their system, how to do their policies and procedures, et cetera. It's very rare for companies to have ongoing training for the entire workflow. It's even more rare for ongoing training for your company's administrators. That's why I created the whole Mastering Encompass platform, is to make it available, accessible, affordable. Please make sure that your teams are talking about how to make sure things are happening, because as you make changes to your workflow, if you're not doing ongoing training for your entire workflow, I guarantee somebody's not going to know what the hell they're doing and something's going to drop dead. Next part is true analytics for your workflow. This is a little bit trickier. And it's sometimes only for certain levels of companies. For an average company, your idea of analytics for your workflow is, do we have enough people to get the loans through, and are they closing on time? All right, that's your true analysis of if your workflow is working. But as you get into more finite visions of your data workflows, you'll actually start looking at how many touches does this loan take with this loan officer for that type of loan in this state from that lead source. This is like when you get into true data analytics. So and Candace says, I'm worrying about how my last company is faring since upper management saw it fit to let go their only full-time Encompass admin. I don't know. Did they hire mortgage workflow partners to take over for them? Not that we take over that company. I don't know. Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. A lot of companies think it's I don't know. We'll say that for another one. I'm going to reinforce also in today's call, as we think about workflows, it's important to remind companies, because I don't know where this information is coming from, but I still hear from, thanks, Candace. I still hear from companies that they think it's two different loan files if they go to Encompass Web or they go to Encompass Desktop. So I just reinforce this. This is like for probably everybody else, but in case anybody's watching this replay, whether you access the loan via your desktop or web interface, same loan file. Just saying. Why is this important? Because this time next year, you're going to have, your company is going to have some people working on Encompass Web. I guarantee it. I don't care who you are. You're going to have somebody using Encompass Web for something. You're also going to have the rest of your company using desktop for who knows how long. The idea is that as an administrator, you want to go through and understand how to configure the best experience for your team with the workflow that's designed. If you're watching this and you're a person who's responsible for your workflow, please make sure you work with your admins to understand what's possible. And if they're not asking you questions of why you're doing things, you better ask questions why you're doing things. Somebody's got to ask questions. It's pretty much how I created my company. Is I went out there and kept asking questions of companies, and they're like, hey, nobody else is asking these questions. Would you mind coming here and helping us? Which I say, yeah. Call to action. Pick one thing. Next 30 days. Who wants to do something in work? Let me ask you a serious question. It's May 13th. So between now and June 13th, what do you think you have a better chance of accomplishing? A workflow update or a technology update? So Lisa, this is like a workflow update. And I'd love to understand, if you've got an idea of which one you'll pick, let me know. So the idea is, Mark says technology. So Mark and Angie, you guys say technology. If you want to type in what it is that you're going to implement in the next 30 days that you don't have today, I'd love to hear it. For Lisa, Candace, or Rebecca, what's the workflow idea that you're going to implement in the next 30 days? And so Denise is like more EPC conversions with workflow rules. So that's your workflow idea, Denise. I love it. And Lisa said that I just know that there's so many overlapping processes. I'd love to start over. And I'm glad you said it that way, Lisa. There's lots of companies that think it's just better to start over. I know 3 companies in the last 2 years that chose to relaunch Encompass. All 3 ended up in this exact same spot where they started, and they spent a butt ton of cash to get to the same place over again because they never fixed their workflow first. It's truth. And so I would say to you, Lisa, not to pick on you, but if you feel like you'd love to just start over, what I would encourage you to do is take that one place that's most painful and map out what they're doing and let the company, let the team of people who's doing that work, ask them, say, is this really what you want to do all day? Like, you don't see you should do it any differently, any better? They're traditionally going to say, I don't know what else to do. That's the way we've always done it. And this is why I'm going to go right back to what I said in the very, very beginning, which is if you're not the one, like if I go back to here, what comes first, workflow or technology? If you're not the one that's actually driving that conversation and nobody else is driving the conversation, it's no wonder that nothing's happening. So the question, so the gauntlet thrown here is, what are you going to do? Today's conversation was all about really trying to build in workflow across your entire organization. You will always have a much better audience when you can show people that if you make them change what they do and there's value to that change, they will advocate for it. You will not have to convince them. Guarantee it. How can I guarantee it? Because I've been doing this, what I just said, I've been doing this for a long time. So figure out what the workflow is. Again, just to kind of show you this one more time. figure out what your workflow is for your department or the team that you're focusing on, or just a part of the team of the department that you're working on. Document what they do your call outs for what needs to be updated or what could be updated, and then do that. Mark says I'm automating all of the EPC integrations, and I'm not telling them there's another option. Oh, you're automating. You mean like the services, Mark? You're automating the services? You can't automate EPC integrations, but I'm assuming you mean services. Okay, cool. That's cool. Candace shared she had a win yesterday. I had a question why they wanted to do another rule to do something that they never needed to be done. They asked the investor, and lo and behold, they no longer have to do that process. So, Candace, thank you for advocating for a little sanity in your workflow. Kudos to you for noticing that this is probably not something that's needed. And for others that maybe have Candace's situation come up and you're just not sure, I'll use one that came up recently having to do with FHA and case number ordering. So in this company, we did the workflow review, and they spend an inordinate amount of time going to FHAC's site to order a case number. And they're like, hey, can't we build an API to like automatically order that? And I'm like, well, you could just go here and click this button or do something else in macros to order the FHA case number, and it'll come back in. And I'm like, over here in the workflow, because we documented the workflow, over here in the workflow, you're putting a copy of the FHAC's website into the e-folder. So that's not a thing. I said that's like a security blanket that most companies a third of the size of you do because their investors demand it. So why are you doing that? And they're like, we don't know. And it turns out they don't have to do that. So going back to Candace's thing, you have to question. Lisa adds, it's hard to convince people that we don't need to do those processes anymore, so they're just stuck in the way we've always done it. And this is why pictures speak 1,000 words. What I typically would encourage you, Lisa, is for those people that you just feel like you're banging your head against the proverbial brick wall because nobody wants to change. People will change if you show them the value that means something to them. They will change every single time. And I have news for you. If you do something like what's on screen and you show them the value of the change, and whoever the manager is of that says no, and you want to run it up to the executive leadership who actually pay all these people's salaries or decide on who gets paid what or who has a job, whoever's running the company will always take stock in saving the organization money or creating more value for the organization or the borrower's experience. Always. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in charge of the business. Advocate for what needs to be done, gang. Candace says, if curious, if it was related to DPA, the agency used to require payers to have DPA. All payers to have DPA put on Part 4B. Oh, down payment assistance. Okay, cool. Thanks, Candace, for explaining that. And somehow you knew part of it to know enough to ask a question. I don't know if I would have thought about that, even for me. I don't have a lot of experience in DPA, so I don't know if I would have caught that. So kudos to you for catching it, and thanks for sharing that story. Gang, love that picture, right? Going back to this original slide, this is how we started. I'm going to tell you to always put workflow before technology, always. And so if there's ever anything that I can answer or advocate for you, post it in the community, ask the question, and we'll go through it, and I'll give you ways to maybe strategize on how to get where you want to go, or even help you understand what's going on in a workflow and how we've solved for that with other workflow solutions. Any questions at all on this topic? Any scenarios that anybody has had? If you want to come on mic, let me know. I'll unmute you and whatever. And if you have any particular, how do I build this or how do I do this for anything down the road here this year, let me know. I'll be posting the full list here, pardon me, before the end of May. And if you want to make sure we cover something, let me know. Otherwise, sit back and enjoy. And I appreciate everybody coming to these, and I hope I'm creating value for you. in the community. Everybody have a great rest of your day. Thanks as always. Go team. We'll see you now.